Sometimes dead is better.
I really enjoyed the film, and I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. I wanted to start speaking about Fantastic Fest. The movie's making its debut there, and it feels like it's a good fit there. What made you want to premiere this movie at Fantastic Fest this year?
Well, we had shown the previous Pet Semetary at South by Southwest, and we'd had a great experience with an experienced audience. And that's what makes Fantastic Fest great, is they're truly people who are excited about the genre, know a lot about the genre. So some of the subtleties that I think would be missed by certain audiences, this audience not only gets it, they revel in that, in the nuance as much as what is the literalness going on. So it's always great to show your movie to a group of fans that are motivated, not to like it, I'm sure they are, but really are motivated because it's a film, and it's Pet Semetary. So that's cool, It's also judgment, because, it's always interesting doing a premiere because in a way it is final judgment for us in terms of what we've done or not, or how we've succeeded or not. So there's always a little bit of trepidation, but with this audience, you feel it has its best shot to be appreciated for the scope of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good fit. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit with you both about what it was like to make this movie for Paramount Plus as opposed to the prior movie for theatrical. Did you approach overseeing the movie any different?
Yeah, I mean, we had to. This was designated for Paramount Plus right in the middle of that furor where everybody was turning the lights on their streaming, and this they knew would be, a beacon for Paramount Plus, et cetera. So we weren't opposed to it, but nobody knew very much about how or what changes needed to be made to make a movie for streaming. Like when we were doing our digital intermediates and things like that, we would sit in that room and it would look okay, and then we'd ask to see it on a screen like everybody else was going to watch it, and it would be too dark. And we had to make these rules up ourselves because we spent a lot of time and effort photographing a beautiful movie, but technically it has to be something completely different. All the sound effects have to be different for a TV at home, right? If you can get a jump scare in a movie theater with a loud noise. Well, if somebody's TV's turned down, you don't get the grace of scaring somebody so easily. And those were technical things, interestingly, that we had to focus on.
No, I think it's amazing the technical detail that goes into it, and as an audience member, you wouldn't know that. I think that's kind of the point, right? Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit as well about the lore of this film. In the first one, you kind of set the stage, I guess, for that, whereas this one you're really getting into, the lore of the land, of the town, and everything. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about what was the appeal to kind of expand the lore of Pet Semetary with this film.
A few things. Part is driven from the experience of making the other, which was trying to describe the evil is super hard. And in a way, that story, that's not the point of that story. That is the point of this story, in a sense, is recalibrating it. So we found it frustrating because we're trying to tell a lot of stories, and then we had a longer explanation of the Wendigo and what goes on. And the more we tried to describe it, the less it made sense, because it was just sort of verbal, like here. So that was something we were interested in doing. But this chapter of the book is one of the fans' seminal chapters, and we heard that when we were making the first, when we were in pre-production. They're like, is Timmy Baterman in? Is Timmy Baterman? So it drove us to that. And then as filmmakers, since it's never been touched, it is a brand new challenge for us. So that always makes you excited about what is possible, and so that, to me, to all of us, Lindsay and Mark and I, all three of us had that sort of, all right, we're covering new ground here. And then you have to line up what is in the book and what isn't in the book, because Steven sometimes has a tendency not to give you much description, which is both great, except that when you show the film, people want a bit more, understanding. So we had to find that balance between what was there and what plausibly he would have had if he'd had a little more description.
Yeah, and that book opens the door to this huge world, and I'm really glad that you guys were able to explore this with this movie. You really assembled this stellar cast, but I wanted to highlight a few people. You got Henry Thomas, Pam Grier, David Duchovny, faces that you would never think were going to be in a Pet Semetary movie, and now they're all in it together. How did you assemble such a strong cast for this film?
Material.
Yeah.
The right material. And then Lindsay had some great instincts about it. And one of the interesting things that because we were really focused on how do you explain the Wendigo? How do you, was it an Indian evil? Was it what was it? And so that exploration, I think, gives the movie some resonance so that it has very sharply drawn characters, which is the only way you get good cast.
Yeah, no, I can imagine the appeal of wanting to join that movie. I guess the film hasn't came out yet, but I'm curious, especially having watched this film, what you two see as the future of the franchise, or I guess what kind of potential do you see moving forward?
I mean, it's hard to know. We haven't thought that far ahead, but it's this chapter had never been told. There are other parts of the mythology. I mean, it's a big book, and there's a lot of story to tell there. We talked in the early days of this about, this particular burial ground. Could there be other burial grounds in other places that were portals for the same sort of evil? That's something we just had a lot of fun talking about on set. There is a lot, of human drama surrounding this concept of bringing people back and trying to change the rules of our world, to serve your own purposes, to satisfy your own emotional needs. I think there's a lot more to explore in terms of that. And, certainly there's a ton more in the book.
So we tend to, it's so hard to make one movie and it be good. We tend not to spend very much time. Ideas will come up mostly with the idea of like, how do we put them in this movie? Same thing with Transformers, same thing with any movie. And then it doesn't fit in. And so you don't forget about it, but you store it away for another time. So we have not spent, really anything other than sort of the mythic possibilities of some of these ideas, where they can go. So, and also we like to feed off what the audience reacts to. So we're really curious about tonight's premiere, because we're going to feel what's going, what really seems to land, and are there areas that seem less interesting to the audience? And that's a great way to then begin a conversation around, what do you do next?
Yeah, to use the audience as kind of the metric for what direction to go in. Well, I definitely think it, like I said earlier, I think it's going to resonate with people, especially the Fantastic Fest crowd.
Is something different.